If a Undisputed capable of hunting polar bears suddenly appeared in today's Siberian wilderness, could it reclaim its spot at the top of the ecosystem? In early spring, as the permafrost just begins to crack, an egg shakes within a pile of gravel. The shell breaks, and a tiny creature weighing less than 40 kilograms struggles to crawl out. Its soaking wet down feathers cling to its skin, and its eyes cannot yet see clearly. Its mother crouches nearby, a 9-meter-long body, like a feathered wall, blocking the freezing wind blowing from the Arctic Ocean. There were 3 eggs in the same clutch, but only he survived. This is no greenhouse. This is nature's most brutal selection. Being born is the very first test. For the first 2 weeks, the hatchling knows nothing, cannot walk, cannot hunt, and cannot even regulate its own body temperature well. The mother uses her own body to wrap him under her feathers, like a living down comforter. By day, the mother goes out to hunt reindeer, carrying torn chunks of meat back to stuff into his mouth. At night, the polar sun scrapes the horizon, refusing to set, yet the temperature still plummets below zero. The hatchling's sole survival strategy is to press itself tightly against its mother. A month later, every predator on this tundra knows something is happening here. A pack of gray wolves is the first to test them. 9 wolves approaching in a fan formation. They have used this tactic for tens of thousands of years, and it has never failed. The mother doesn't even speed up. She merely turns around, and from deep within her chest, emits a low-frequency rumble. That sound isn't heard with the ears. It is felt through the bones. The wolf pack instantly collapses, turning tail and running, never to appear in this territory again. A brown bear makes the same mistake. A 400-kilogram male bear tries to steal her prey. 4 seconds later, it drags a blood-drenched shoulder as it flees into the woods. From then on, within a 50-kilometer radius, no living creature dares to approach this mother and cub. This is the absolute dominance of Undisputed. She doesn't need to chase. She doesn't need to ambush. She only needs to stand there, and the entire ecosystem automatically steps aside. But there is one thing that will not step aside: winter. In September, the temperature plummets straight from above freezing to minus 40 degrees. Reindeer migrate away, and small prey burrow underground. The entire tundra feels as if its lifeblood has been drained. Only the muskoxen remain. They do not migrate. They endure the harsh conditions with their thick hides. When facing a threat, they form a tight defensive circle, with the adults facing outward, and the calves hidden in the center. This defensive formation has held off wolf packs for 10,000 years. The mother tries to break this circular formation. She circles them 3 times, and makes 2 feints, but ultimately gives up. It's not that she isn't strong enough. It's that this wall has no gaps. In November, it hits minus 50 degrees. The mother's feathers evolve for a cool climate, not for the extreme polar cold. She begins to reduce her activity, saving all remaining food for her cub. Do you know what that means? She is using up her own fat reserves, just to buy her child one more day of life. This mathematical equation was unsolvable from the very start. On a December morning, the cub, as usual, nuzzles his head into his mother's feathers. There is no warmth anymore. There is no breathing anymore. The body that has sheltered him his entire life has turned into a frozen, lifeless statue. The most powerful predator on the continent did not lose to any opponent, but instead lost to a toothless enemy, the freezing temperature. This is the cruelest truth of nature. Sheer power cannot solve every problem. The cub stays by his mother's side for a long time, and then, driven by instinct, he stands up and walks away. Weighing only 40 kilograms, he has never hunted anything on his own, and ahead of him lie 8 months of severe winter. He eats frozen voles, gnaws on dead fish by the lake, and digs through the snow to find the remains left by his mother months ago. Every single day, his body is running on a deficit. When the fat burns out, it burns muscle. When the muscle burns out, it burns willpower. In February, he crouched behind a rock, his legs no longer wanting to move. His body was saying, lie down, save some energy. But 125 million years of evolutionary genes were saying, get up, and he stood up. When spring arrived, he was so skinny that his ribs were showing. But he was alive. His first independent kill was an Arctic hare. After chasing it for 20 minutes and biting it to death, a certain switch was flipped at that exact moment. He was no longer a cub waiting to be fed. He was a hunter. In his first summer, he ambushed a lone reindeer calf at a river crossing. The moment the warm, fresh blood flowed down his throat, every cell in his body screamed. This was exactly what he was designed to do. For the next 3 years, he was like a learning machine. The migration routes of the reindeer, the river crossing points, the weaknesses of the musk-oxen defensive circle, he committed them all to memory. In his second winter, he attempted to charge a musk-oxen defensive circle, but his thigh was gashed by a bull's horn. That wound almost cost him his life, but it also taught him the most important lesson. It wasn't a lack of strength, it was a lack of patience. In his third year, he faced the defensive circle again. This time, he circled around for a full hour, waiting for the musk-oxen's attention to waver, waiting for a gap to open up between two cows. Then, feinting to the left, he cut in from the right, breached the defensive line, and snatched away a calf. A defense system that hadn't been breached in 10,000 years, shattered before him. By his fifth year, he had grown to 1,200 kilograms, the same size his mother used to be. But he possessed one thing his mother didn't: experience. He knew the depth of every river, the territorial boundaries of every wolf pack, which part of the ice sheet could be stepped on, and which part would collapse. A polar bear once came to challenge him. The 700-kilogram white behemoth charged at full speed. He stepped aside to dodge, and bit down on the opponent's shoulder blade. The polar bear retreated back to the coastline with its mangled body. From then on, its figure never appeared in the inland tundra again. Wolf packs followed behind him to scavenge leftovers. Brown bears voluntarily relocated, swiftly changing migration routes they had used for thousands of years, just to bypass his hunting grounds. A single creature, entirely on his own, reshaped the rules of an entire ecosystem. Yet, every winter, he still had to face that unsolvable math problem alone. Is there enough fat to last until spring? Is there enough food to maintain body temperature? One year, spring was delayed by 6 days. Those 6 days were the entire distance between him and death. In the 6th or 7th year, he couldn't remember clearly. He walked for 3 days to return to the place where his mother had died. The bones had already weathered into a stark white, scattered across the permafrost. Some had been washed away by the lake. Some had sunk into the ground. But the outline was still there, the massive skull, the ribs fanning out, and the leg bones that once made the earth tremble. A low, deep resonance. It passed through his chest cavity, rolled across the empty valley, and dissolved into the wind. Nothing responded. On the entire planet, only he knew what that sound meant. The last loose thread of a species that went extinct 125 million years ago. A belated joke played by the universe. He was his entire race. The day he dies, this sound will completely vanish from the universe. No living soul will ever remember that he once existed. But until then, but before that, he still has to face every single winter. Keep hunting, keep starving, keep curling up alone in the dark nights at minus 50 degrees, counting the days while waiting for spring. Some lives are destined to be lonely, but loneliness does not equal meaninglessness. He survived the winters his mother couldn't, cracked the defensive line unbroken for 10,000 years, and caused the ecology of an entire continent to rewrite itself for him. With a mere 40-kilogram remnant body to start, he lived to become the most dangerous presence on this planet. Animals will not remember it. The wind will not stop for it. But it did indeed come. It did indeed burn. It did indeed make this land, which had been silent for 10,000 years, tremble once again. And that is enough. You think the most ferocious prehistoric animal was the Tyrannosaurus Rex. You are wrong. You think dinosaurs were the strongest land apex predators in Earth's history. Dead wrong. Before dinosaurs dominated, there was a group of creatures that slaughtered their competitors until not a single one was left. You think that group of creatures lost to a stronger opponent. Completely incorrect. What defeated them was not any form of life, but something far more terrifying beneath the ground. 290 million years ago, there was a group of guys who had already mastered the art of slaughter. Take a bite and back off, standing by to watch you bleed out, with venom glands inside their bodies. Even the ancestors of dinosaurs would steer clear of them, just waiting for you to come drink water. Stay on land and you die. Go into the water and you die too. Where can you possibly run? This was the Permian period, an era where even running away was a luxury. In this era, dinosaurs weren't even qualified to show up yet. Let's talk about this continent first. After entering the Permian period, the several scattered landmasses originally on Earth were slowly pushed together by tectonic plate movements, eventually merging into the most famous supercontinent in Earth's history, Pangaea. If you open a world map right now and push all the continents toward the center until they fit tightly together, that is exactly what it looked like back then. This continent occupied nearly half of the Earth's surface area. But being massive came with massive trouble. The inland areas were far from the ocean, so moisture could not penetrate deep inside. A giant mountain range also rose up in the middle of the continent, completely cutting off the north from the south. With all humid air currents completely blocked, the result was that the heart of Pangaea turned into a super desert, several times larger than today's Sahara. The surface temperature was hot enough to bake a lizard directly into jerky. Yet, the harsher the environment, the more it pushes life to its absolute limits. All life was squeezed into a few relatively habitable corners. The most heavily concentrated of these was the northern region near the Paleotethys Ocean, which is around modern-day Siberia, Russia. The climate there was relatively cool, and water sources were relatively abundant. But don't you dare think for a second that this place was safe, because it was precisely here that became the land with the highest density of monsters and the thickest intent to kill in Earth's history. The strongest predator on land was called Gorgonopsian. When many people hear this name for the first time, they think it's some kind of lizard. Wrong. It was a class of ancient creatures bridging the gap between reptiles and mammals, scientifically known as non-mammalian therapsids. If you trace the lineage of all mammals alive today far enough back, they all share the same ancestry and origin as this creature. But don't be too quick to feel a sense of kinship, because they were truly incredibly vicious back then. The largest species in their family was called Inostrancevia. Fossils of it have only been discovered in Russia so far. Its body length exceeded 3 meters, and the largest individuals could reach up to 3.5 meters, weighing close to 400 kilograms, roughly the same as an adult polar bear. However, its skull was a whopping 40% larger than a polar bear's. Scientists' reconstructions show its gape could open up to 90 degrees. Imagine a body the size of a polar bear, with a mouth like an open book, packed inside with 2 rows of long, saber-like teeth, charging right at you at accelerating speed. What's even more despair-inducing is its hunting style. It wasn't like modern felines, which focus on a throat-locking instant kill. Its strategy was more primitive and far more cruel. It would rush up, take a vicious bite, tear open the wound, and then back away. Standing at a distance, it would coldly watch you bleed, tremble, and slowly collapse. If you weren't dead yet, it would deliver another bite to finish you off. Paleontologists discovered a tooth from a fellow species deeply embedded, into the front of an Innostransevia skull fossil. There were also clear signs of healing around it, which proves that this particular Innostransevia was bitten by one of its own kind back then, yet somehow pulled through and continued to live for a long time. When even their intraspecies socializing is done by tearing into each other, you know just how wild this bunch of creatures really was. If you think the land is too dangerous and want to jump into a river to hide, that might be the stupidest decision you could ever make. Lurking within the rivers and swamps of the Permian period was a monster called Tyrannosaurus. It's not a crocodile. It's not a lizard. It's an amphibian, a distant relative of frogs. But the moment you see it, the word frog will never cross your mind. It's nearly 9 meters long, the largest known amphibian in Earth's history. Its head is over half a meter long, and its mouth is packed with dense, inward curving, sharp fangs. Its entire body resembles a thick, massive underwater beast, lying perfectly still at the murky bottom. Standing on the shore, you cannot see it at all. All you see is a calm river. Then you bend down to take a sip of water, and it's already there. The moment that half-meter-long mouth bites you, you won't even have time to react. These sharp fangs are not for slicing. They are used to lock you in tight. The more you struggle, the deeper they embed. This thing doesn't need to drag you into deep water. It just needs to bite you. And wait, even if you manage to escape by luck, there is another terrifying creature on land with a massive sail on its back. It's called Dimetrodon. It measures nearly 4 meters in body length, and the row of bony sail spines on its back can reach over a meter high, like an open folding fan rising from the dead center of its spine. The very first question that pops into your head when you see it must be, what is that sail for? Scientists have argued for 100 years, and there is still no consensus. Some say it was for regulating body temperature, relying on the sail to absorb solar heat, allowing it to enter hunting mode earlier than other reptiles. Some say it was a courtship signal, where a larger sail could intimidate rivals. Still others say this is simply a weapon to cause visual misjudgment in prey, making them underestimate its true size. But no matter what the sail was used for, one thing is certain. Dimetrodon's mouth was the real nightmare. It was the earliest animal in Earth's history to evolve differentiated teeth. In the front were sharp incisors, and in the back were strong canines, specifically used for tearing, cutting, and locking down prey. This dental structure was later fully inherited by mammals, and is still used today, including the teeth inside your own mouth. Yes, you heard that right. Dimetrodon is not a dinosaur. It's a distant relative of yours. Compared to Gorgonopsians, its evolutionary relationship to you is actually a bit closer. And then, that bomb detonated. 252 million years ago, beneath Siberia, a mantle plume burst through the Earth's crust. It wasn't the kind of volcanic eruption we usually imagine with soaring mushroom clouds and fiery explosions. Instead, it was a silent, voiceless tearing of the Earth's crust stretching for thousands of kilometers. Magma poured out from the fissures like a bursting dam, covering over 7 million square kilometers of land. That is equivalent to paving the entirety of Australia over with molten lava. In some places, the accumulated basalt exceeded a thickness of 3,000 meters. This eruption continued for hundreds of thousands of years without stopping. This is known as the Siberian Traps event. But the magma itself was not the deadliest part. The real killer was the chain reaction. The massive eruption injected astronomical amounts of carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide into the atmosphere. Acid rain poured down. Plants died off in vast swaths, and the food chain began to collapse from its very foundation. The greenhouse effect then spiraled out of control. Global average temperatures surged by at least 10 degrees Celsius within a very short geological time frame. Ocean surface temperatures reached 40 degrees Celsius, turning into a pot of hot soup. coral reefs died out completely. A research team from the University of Science and Technology of China, by analyzing anomalous changes in carbon isotopes within fossils, estimated that the initial most violent phase lasted for only about 15,000 years. 15,000 years, and Earth went from a vibrant, living planet to a burning wasteland. Next, the oceans began to lose oxygen, and sulfur-reducing bacteria at the deep sea bottom multiplied rapidly, releasing highly toxic hydrogen sulfide, continuing to diffuse into the upper water layers. The entire ocean changed from blue to olive green and a decaying purplish brown. Volcanic gases simultaneously eroded the ozone layer. Ultraviolet rays beamed directly onto the Earth's surface. Hardly any living organism had any defense left. What about those monsters that ruled the continent just a moment ago? The Lycanopes were gone. The Gorgonopsians went extinct. The armored amphibious monsters were almost completely wiped out. The fangs and armor they were so proud of were utterly meaningless in the face of a suffocating atmosphere and scalding acid rain. The most sophisticated killing machines in Earth's history were as fragile as a piece of paper in the face of this disaster. The final numbers were: over 96% of marine species went extinct. Over 70% of terrestrial species vanished. Earth's entire evolutionary tree of life was nearly uprooted, leaving only a few withered branches and remnants. Some call this disaster the Great Dying. It was the closest life has ever come to total extinction. In Earth's 4.6 billion year history, the complete recovery of the ecosystem took a full 50 million years. Every time I think about this, I fall into a long silence. We always say we want to protect the Earth, but the Earth doesn't need us to save it. It has seen disasters 100 times more tragic than this, and it survived them all. The ones who truly need protecting are ourselves. This planet has gone through 5 mass extinctions. Each time, it seemed like the end, and each time, new branches grew back. It doesn't need any form of life to worry about it. The desperate straits it has endured are 1,000 times more brutal than we can imagine. It just doesn't know whether, after the next reboot, the newly grown branch will still have room for us to sit on. And that answer is ours alone to write.